No? Okay. So we will go to the first item I have here at hand. Let's see, I'm sorry, I don't know. Is this, Earl Dorr? Good morning. Please come to the podium and state your name and generally where you live, please.
My name's Earl Dorr. I'm in Precinct 28. It's that Incanterra group over there. I'm a precinct committeeman with the GOP, retired law enforcement, and I worked the last election. I was a marshal yesterday in yesterday's election, and actually I spoke to Supervisor Goodman yesterday. And that was what I wanted to address. So you have an issue with lack of trust of your voters. And I know this county didn't have the issues. This county didn't have the issues that Maricopa County had. But it takes like used car salesmen. All you need is one to hose you over. You don't trust the rest of them. Okay, so we came into that. First off, your ballot boxes for the Queen Creek election. The poll pad things were stuck in it. So the guy that was running this thing, the inspector, he didn't realize that was the actual ballot box. But it's a ballot box with no locks. Locks got delivered later. It didn't have a slot to put it in, so we had access to it. So since my inspector didn't see it right off the top, we just put the transfer bag out there, and the first 3 voters that came in, the first guy goes, This is unacceptable. You have access to those ballots. This is a legal issue. And he goes, and I thought he's absolutely right. We're supposed to separate these ballots. So basically we took the regular blue box that we have to lock and we don't have the key for, and I just put everything in there because I know it's going to the same place. We can sort it later. We were trying to call and ask about that box. The phone lines aren't open at 5:30 when we're there. When they were open, they were backed up. We couldn't get through, or you're 12 in line, so 30 minutes later they'd address an issue. We knew early on that we were going to be low on ballots. There's 2 kinds of ballots, and we were calling them by their numbers yesterday. So there's a PM3, which is for Santan Valley, which doesn't have the Queen Creek issues on the back, and there's a PM4, which has the Queen Creek issues on the back, but we're not supposed to use that to vote. We have a separate Queen Creek ballot. So they told us about 20 minutes, and then it was about 20 minutes, and then it was about 20 minutes. We ran out completely at 1 o'clock. So I have Republican voters stacked up waiting for those ballots to come. We'd already issued them their tickets. And we put chairs out for them. We were trying to be cordial, everybody was was very cordial. But they're also watching Democratic voters come through and pick their ballots up and go vote. It's pretty clear when there's a blue one being picked up right there at the voting tables or not. So it just didn't look good. And we had some people leave that were angry. Then you had issues like felt pens. Felt pens were an issue in Maricopa County last time, and I was assured that they weren't an issue here, but I had a lot of voters jam me about that.
Mr. Dorr, I'm going to ask you, your time is up at 3 minutes, so can you conclude, please?
Sure. You need to have better training. You need to educate your public about things like your felt pens. Paper's cheap, trust is not, and you had only about 500 votes cast. So out of those 500 votes, that was not last when I worked, we had 1,000 votes cast. So we didn't have too many people coming in. We just had too few ballots, and they weren't delivered. And when we did get ballots, they were PM3s anyway, and they're folded, and they say early voting on them. So I asked earlier, can we use those and do the Queen Creek ballot? They told us no. So anyway, you have some issues. I'd be more than happy to talk anytime you want or answer any of those questions, but firsthand,
thank you, Mr.
It wasn't good.
Okay, thank you. All right, next up, Kathleen Nowak. Please state your name and generally where you live.
My name is Kathleen Nowak. I live in Santan Valley. I'm the district chair for the Republican Party out there, and we have got some problems, and you guys know it. We are angry. listened when you said the ballot box or the ballot misprint and so forth was human error. I said at that time we needed to rid ourselves of the problem. I'm telling you, we got to get rid of the problem now. The elections department is a problem. They have no ability to upgrade and renew the poll worker list. I was told they had 1,500 to 2,000 people on that list, and yet 2 weeks before the time they called me and said, oh, we need 10 to 15 more people in your district. So I recruited 11. Very few of them were actually used. 10 days before the election, I got an email saying you need 30 to 35 people in your area as poll workers. My friend over in AJ got an email saying she needed 60 to 65 workers in that area. What the heck kind of planning is this that they don't know what they're doing? I think you can see that the planning is lacking, that they're in disarray or chaos. The training is even worse. Earl went into some of the details. I could tell you stories about supervisors that said that were instructing people to give the wrong ballots, to pass out the wrong ballots, that they didn't know what time the polls opened, supervisors that didn't call their people to help set up the day ahead, had no interaction with them at all. And when we talk about ballots, now here is the important thing. Always, common sense tells you look to see how many ballots you sent out in the last election for the primary so that you plan for even more. I had districts or polling places that told me they got 300 ballots and they've got a registration of Republicans for 3,200 people. We've got polling places where they sent out 50 Republican ballots and 50 Democrat ballots. We're 3-1 in this county. This what kind of planning is this? What projections? And don't do the cover-up thing about how we had an influx of Republican voters and people turned in their mail-in ballot in order to vote there. My observers say there was 6 or 8 or 10. This is not what the problem was. We didn't produce enough ballots and and send them out to the polls. And then we had them being printed in Coolidge, and you ordered, if you were the supervisor in precinct 26, you ordered 50, and an hour later or 3 hours later, you'd get ballots that they were printing off in Coolidge. This is totally, completely unacceptable. My solution, again, is to say, let's rid ourselves of the problem and go to the people who have knowledge of how this is run in the past in Pinal County. We've always had good elections. We've got some people that know. I think our recorder's there. I think there's other people. I think we've got attorneys who know the process and how it should be. We need to do something different in Pinal County. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nowak. Next, Dan Dooley, please.
Good morning, Chairman, rest of the board. Precincts without ballots. I can't tell you it's already a national embarrassment. But the most important thing is the damage to the citizens that couldn't vote. Enough said about that. I thought about it last night, tried to take my emotions out of it. And I thought about this. First of all, I've had over 20 years of quality assurance or quality control experience with a Fortune 500, Fortune 100 company. And the first thing that came to my mind was you've got a serious quality assurance problem, structurally as well as qualified people that really know about quality. And quality is many things, and I'm not going to preach about it, but let's look at it like this. You've had 2 major problems in the last few months. The first time was 7 localities where the ballots were messed up. Okay? I can deal with 1 or 2, maybe as a statistical analysis, maybe 1 locality, but 7? Okay, and then a month or so later, we are running out of ballots in 12 to 20 precincts. That statistically is ridiculous. I mean, it's unacceptable. The only thing I could think of is that there are no standards, weak standards, no continuous improvement process within that department and or the county. Maybe there is. I'm not trying to bash the whole thing because I think the county overall runs pretty well. But this is the second time in a short time. Easily fixed. These things can be easily fixed. The second thing is administrative problems, which tie into a quality control or quality assurance program. You either don't have enough qualified staff or enough staff at all in certain areas. The second thing, and it's probably something you need to review, is the vetting or interview process is faulty. You can't bring in a new elections director and have these problems in such a short amount of time. Now, I'm not trying to attack that individual, but just look at it collectively. How does this happen? So the job performance, the expectations are low in some cases, and there has to be some way of measuring that. So again, if I emphasize anything, it's something that has to be reviewed from top to bottom, and that means county manager, board of supervisors, directors in the department. Everybody plays a part. So I think if you have any questions on that, I can certainly give you my input because I've had experience in this before. In the private sector, these things are rectified pretty quickly, and you can't sugarcoat this kind of stuff. This is the problem, and this is where we move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dooling. Steve Poe, please. Mr. Poe.
Thank you. Good morning. And I'd like to first say thanks to Mike Goodman for showing up yesterday to address the concerns that you're hearing about with the running out of ballots. He was very thorough in his explanation on what was going on, but it kind of blew my mind that we're printing ballots on Election Day. Okay? That's inexcusable and unacceptable to all the people in Pinal County. I'm sure of that. After the 2020 election, I volunteered to be a precinct committee man. So I'm in precinct 28, and that's where I was yesterday as a volunteer to be a poll observer. So I got to watch all the interaction, and I will say that Earl and his team were unbelievable. They calmed the whole situation down. Most people were okay. They came back and voted later once we had the ballots because we put a list together to let them know that they're here. There were a few that got angry, and there was one that sat there and waited for about 3 hours for the ballots to show up. Mike came back later after we'd received the ballots, which I thought was outstanding, good follow-up. But unfortunately, all of this really, he told me that you guys hold responsibility for what happened in this because you guys approved this new director of elections, David Frisk. I'm sorry, but I had to mention his name. He needs to be held accountable, and by being held accountable, I mean he needs to be terminated. The first mistake was, first mistake is shame on you. Second one is shame on me. I don't see how we can go forward with this guy in charge of our elections because we've got the general coming up pretty soon. And God only knows how this one's going to turn out because as of 9 o'clock last night, there were 0 in from Pinal County. So I hope that you guys could do the right thing and replace this individual. And I don't mean just replace him and put him down into the committee somewhere. He needs to be removed from the system. And thanks for hearing me out.
Mr. Poe, would you please just state your name and generally where you live? I mean, I know you got to speak, but would you please, for the record, please just state your name and generally where you are?
I'm sorry, Steve Poe. I live in Queen Creek.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Next up, Bill Hoff. And if you would, please, we'll cut the formality. Please state your name and generally where you live. Thank you.
Bill Hoff, resident of Queen Creek. I am a precinct captain. And in fairness to your time and those in the crowd, I'll make this short. I have had the privilege of sitting in on poll watching in 3 different states, and more so the privilege of sitting in on the one in Queen Creek just 2 years ago. And watching the expression on people's faces when they came in yesterday to do nothing more than vote their conscience, being told we ran out of ballots. And then to complicate that further, not being able to tell them when or if they will ever come in. And the folks who waited patiently then came back. They were instructed to come back before 7 o'clock. As Steve mentioned, we were able to get a little bit of a list together to call these folks just to say, yes, they're in, hurry on down. The patience of these people was unbelievable, and it made me proud to be a part of the community. But we cannot allow this lack of ballots to ever happen in our community, or frankly anywhere else again. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Hoff. Belinda Rodriguez. And again, please state your name and generally where you live. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Belinda Rodriguez, and I live in District 5, Gold Canyon, but have most recently, probably for about the last year, been helping in D2, because I lived in this area as well, and helping Kathy Nowak with a lot of her things to help in her district. So I've had some experience in state government, and I've owned my own business for over 22 years, and many years of project management. I know you've heard a lot of the incidents so far, and I'm sure you're going to hear a lot more. So I'm not going to dwell on a lot of those. I'm just going to say by 10 a.m. yesterday, a lot of the precincts in our area had run out of ballots. You have access to voter history, as I'm sure the elections department does as well, because I just went to your site and downloaded it myself and could see the numbers. It would have taken someone 30 minutes to an hour to analyze that data and to see and evaluate how many ballots would have been needed at each precinct. For instance, Precinct 28, they had 3,276 voters previously. They received 350 ballots. I don't think it takes a genius to figure that math out that they're going to run out. Every precinct received between 350 is the highest amount I've heard. Yet we overprinted at the precinct I was working at yesterday 600 municipal ballots. I don't understand why. Okay, and that they only had voters registered previously of 607. Somebody's not doing their analysis. And you all know in project management, there's a lot of different steps, okay? You have to have step by step. And somebody missed the research and analysis part in this whole thing. Poll observers, we started scheduling poll observers for both, and I'm speaking as to what I did in the areas that I helped, as early as May, and we had to turn in a list by June 15th. And then all of a sudden, we had all our stations filled, and we start getting phone calls from our observers saying, I have to cross me off because I'm now a poll worker. So we had to scramble up until the last minute. You know, Vicki and Kathy had to go scramble and fill those spots again because they were taken by poll workers. We're looking to do whatever helps the county and the party and everyone involved, okay? But there's got to be better planning. We were told there was a list of 4,000 poll workers early on. Why are we waiting till the last minute to find poll workers? I spoke to a couple of the inspectors at the precincts, and they said that they did not ever receive any lists of their workers. One of them had to drive all the way to Coolidge the day before to get their list of workers in order to know who was going to be at that precinct. That's inexcusable. There's got to be better design or assignment of tasks and responsibilities. Okay. The last thing is that when I stayed until everything was done and closed. The Public Works gentleman were great. They picked up the boxes, and we were trying to, quickly get everything together so they could take the whole cage. Nope. They were only going to take the boxes with the ballots. But what happened is we left 475 municipal ballots, maybe 150 to, I think it was 272 in all of all the other unused ballots. That's where the shenanigans happen. Why did we not secure those as well? That's, again, inexcusable, okay? Someone is not communicating. And again, all I urge you to is there are steps in project management, okay, that people have to take. You have to initiate the project, you have to analyze, research, you got to plan, you got to execute. Execute means you have to put together a procedural plan so that year after year, whoever comes in knows exactly what they're going to do. If that gentleman...
Please wrap up.
Yep. If that gentleman gets run over by a truck, tomorrow somebody can step in and fill their role. And so I urge you to do that. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. Okay. Heather Tipple, I believe.
Good morning. My name is Heather Tipple. I live in Santan Valley. I'm here to speak to you, and I do appreciate your time. Thank you so much. This morning about our youth sports. I'm a resident baseball mom, and I feel like it's extremely important that we start to work to get some fields for our kids for sports. We're at the mercy of the schools and using green space where we can find it, getting kicked out of HOAs, running into all kinds of trouble here. I think you guys all can agree how important youth sports are. It keeps our kids goal-oriented, out of trouble, healthy, active. My son is 13, plays baseball. I asked him, Cody, what do you feel you need a baseball field for? And a 13-year-old gave me the description of, it's like when you want to go to the beach, Mom, but somebody takes you to a splash pad. He's like, that experience just isn't there. And he's like, you can't feel the game when you're, playing in some grass and there's holes everywhere and no backstop and balls are running into the street. It poses a danger. Again, Mr. Goodman, I kind of read up on your history, and, I feel like your father, he started the Rough Riders, if I recall. I think he had the vision that the Santan Little League has right now for our kids. We need something. We need structure for them, and we're all here. We're willing to help. You tell me what you need. You tell me what you want, and I'm on it. Whatever, I will give that commitment to all of you and to our little area here. And I do understand complications that we run into of not being an actual town or city. So I do get that. But I feel as a united front and as a group, we can make differences. We can make changes. This is something I really, really feel important need for our kids out here. I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Tipple. And Supervisor Goodman, your name was mentioned, if you'd like to respond.
Yeah, I would. Thank you. And I appreciate that. And the tribute to my father, I appreciate that as well. And I'm falling very short of my dad's accomplishments. I'll tell you that right now. I see that. So, but just so you know, and I appreciate your willingness to step into the wind with me, the storm, because that's really what we're doing. And I'm going to take you up on that because we've been in the process over the last 2 years working on this very issue that you're talking about, and specifically for the Little League program. So we're taking a lot of initiatives. So anyway, if you'll get with me out directly following the meeting or get a hold of my staff and we'll get you into the loop. Thank you so much.
All right. Next would be Daniel Vincent. For the record, please state your name and generally where you live.
Daniel Vincent, Santan Valley. obviously speaking on the same issue. I'm a board member with the Santan Valley Little League. I think we spoke on the phone 3-4 weeks back. I appreciate everybody's time on this matter, so I'll try to be as quick as possible. Santan Valley was established, the Little League was established back in 2011 as a charter through Little League International. Ever since, we've struggled to find fields. We use Copper Basin, Walker Butte. We've tried to look at other places, but every field's almost exactly the same. It's through FUSD, and barely any of them are playable. We're bleeding funds, the funds that we've raised to give kids scholarships to play in these youth sports, and we're bleeding funds just trying to take care of and maintain the fields that the schools aren't maintaining, and they just raised the rates almost 67% a couple weeks back, and that's a lot. That is a lot of money that we're going to have to pay to play at these fields that are in poor condition as is, that we're using all of our money to make them better and not getting a cut from it, They're not doing us any favors there. The population is well over 100,000. Queen Creek, they've got, I believe, 3 complexes right now, baseball complexes and softball complexes, and building 4 and 5 as we speak. And it's extremely disappointing that we haven't been able to do that here. And I know I've got an older son that's 18 that kind of grew up in this whole system, so I was doing this in 13 and 14 when it was brand new. And I remember then we were still trying to find fields, and here we are almost 12 years later, still fighting the same cause. I just, she had said, we are here to help, we just need some land and we'll build it, We just need help locating that or knowing of what's for sale and what is able to be leased or purchased or whatever, so we can build that here, I think everybody on that board in Little League is trying to fight for the same cause. We are on this thing till we bring a complex to Santan Valley. I think most of our kids will probably be grown and out of Little League, but it's for the next generation, and generations to come, hopefully. So, Daniel, Vincent, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vincent. All right, next up, Ralph Atchu.
Mr. Chairman and Board, my name is Ralph Atchu. I live in Eloy, Arizona. And Eloy had its fair share of election problems as well, but that's not the topic I'm speaking on. As a longtime citizen of Pinal County, I've become growingly concerned about the politicalization of the Pinal County Sheriff's Department. While I fully understand that this is an elected office, and as such, we'll have candidates taking partisan positions, it is becoming apparent that Sheriff Lamb is crossing a line that we consider to be dangerous. Pinal County has a diverse population. We come from all walks of life and hold an infinity of political and policy perspectives. Due to his extreme right-wing activism, however, Sheriff Lamb has directly put those of us who disagree with him on notice. He does not represent us, and we fear that he will fail to uphold his oath of office to serve and protect us. Sheriff Lamb has publicly aligned himself with radical conspiracies such as anti-vaccinations, the big lie, and Stop the Steal. He has voiced support for the January 6th rioters and encouraged the formation of militia groups similar to the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, now known to have organized and participated in the violent storming of our Capitol. He's affiliated with Protect America Now and similar organizations that lobby for a more militarized police force and the building of an army to fight against our democratically elected government. Sheriff Lamb and a few other so-called constitutional sheriffs describe themselves as the supreme legal authority in America and therefore put themselves above the authority of both the President and the Supreme Court of the United States. My references and quotes can be found in publicly printed news articles and are readily available. If, upon request, I will supply them. Pinal County needs a sheriff, a law enforcement officer, and not a reality show character. The Pinal Board of Supervisors has an oath-sworn duty to serve the people who reside here. When the elected sheriff demonstrates that he is no longer to be trusted to uphold his oath of office, it's time for this board to investigate and take action. The citizens of Pinal County deserve and should expect nothing less. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Atchu. Susan, I believe it says Wortman.
My name is Susan Wortman. I live in Casa Grande. Greetings to all of you. I'm here to share my perspective of my late husband, Dr. Randy J. Wortman, who is part of the posse. When Randy retired from education in 2006, he decided to be a member of our county's posse because he felt it was an important way to give back to our community and do something to help Casa Grande besides personal growth and adventure. Volunteering has always been part of our lives, and helping to bring safety to our community members was a wonderful goal for him to work on. But back then, there were several tests that proposed posse members had to pass in order to be an official Pinal County posse member. However, Randy was able to pass the target gun test, but didn't pass the entire weapon test because he was not able to reload the gun fast enough. At that time, his Parkinson's disease was getting worse, and Randy dealt with this issue as he always dealt problems. He effectively problem solved, thought creatively out of the box, and figured out a different way to be a posse member. Randy didn't give up at all. He proposed a recruitment program to find new members and offered himself as the head of this proposed project. And so Sheriff Chris Vasquez and the posse officers decided that his communication skills were so effective they kept him in the posse for the purpose of recruiting new members. So Randy became a formal Pinal County member. Since his main assignments were recruitment and publicity and public relations, Randy would want to make sure that all of you know that it's a highly trained, specialized uniformed group, and they do a lot of extensive training and duties. When Randy recalled his activities with the posse, he concluded that political issues did divert the sheriff's attention from posse projects, and so some of the volunteer program was kind of ignored. When Randy was part of the posse, he respected Sheriff Chris Vasquez, who was our county sheriff between 2005 and 2009. The sheriff current, Mark Lamb, in my opinion, has politicized his job too far and has been focused more about power issues, and so he seems to be selective about which laws he's enforcing. My husband loved to be part of a group that was bringing safety to our community. But the message now seems to, from Mr. Lamb and other sheriffs around the country, seems to be that sheriffs are here to protect your freedom, including freedom from your own democratically elected government. I think our world has been so scary and crazy. If we're afraid of our own sheriff, we all need to work on making our communities more safe. I think we need to be honest about where the unsafe elements are coming from. Please look at what's happening in our community. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Ms. Wortman. Lastly, here I have Margaret Baca.
Good morning.
Could you please
My name
state-
is Margaret Baca, and I'm from Casa Grande. To the Board of Supervisors of Pinal County, I'm not sure what you can do about this. However, I do feel it is very important to bring this to your attention as well as the attention of the citizens of Pinal County. Sheriff Mark Lamb has formed and participates in groups called Protect America Now and True the Vote. My question to Sheriff Lamb is, Protect America, more specifically Pinal County, from what? I don't recall any election problems from the 2020 election in our county. We actually saw Republicans win their races. We saw that the Pinal County Board of Supervisors, with a Republican majority, certified the 2020 election. It appears that Sheriff Lamb is looking for a solution to a non-existent problem. Sheriff Lamb is trying to incorporate the ridiculous big lie theory and most recently 2,000 mules, nothing proven, into how he runs this office. On a county, state, and federal level, the 2020 election was deemed accurate and secure. All 60 lawsuits were dismissed because of lack of factual evidence. The United States Attorney General, William Barr, a Trump appointee, stated that there was no evidence of fraud. We can run around with our hair on fire, crying election fraud, with absolutely no proof, or we can work to follow our Constitution and rule of law. Put divisive actions such as Project America Now and the vote in the dumpster of bad ideas and move on. We don't need an armed militia intimidating voters at election sites. Now then, because of the recent problems of the election that we've just heard about, I truly believe that you should investigate this. This would be very prudent. And correct the mistakes that were made. But in no way do I feel that there is any fraud. So let's get on to the business at hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Baca. That's the end of my request. Are there any others that wish to address the board? Okay, I've got four, so I'm going to start. Ms. Smith, I'm going to let you go first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Board of Supervisors. My name is Nancy Smith, City Council Member for the City of Maricopa. In listening to all of the information that's been shared thus far, I want to make it clear it's not just a simple situation where there were not enough ballots printed. In the City of Maricopa, there's also this issue that the correct ballots were not given to our voters. In several precincts, we had voters that came to vote and were not given the supplemental ballot for the city council race, and so that's a second problem. And I also see this as a systemic problem in the Pinal County. 2 years ago, the City of Maricopa had ballot problems. I'm glad the City of Casa Grande did not, but the City of Maricopa did have ballot problems in one or two, I want to say one for certain, of the precincts where the council members were left off as well. So this is obviously a systemic problem, something that needs to be fixed. My recommendation would be to include city clerks in an evaluation subcommittee so that we can get to the issues of these process problems. And a simple solution would be that if our city clerk had been given a ballot from every precinct prior to printing the ballots, she certainly could have caught the problems initially. And then we also know, as of yesterday, that there are process problems in training and that we have to resolve those issues as well. So it's definitely a serious problem. In listening on the radio, it's embarrassing Pinal County was made fun of in every way, shape, and form throughout the day. It's become a national problem, and it's something we must fix. I appreciate your looking at that and making some very, very solid recommendations, and including the city clerks as part of the solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Next, sir, the turquoise shirt. He stands out.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. My name is Bill Robertson, resident of Maricopa. I'd like to start off by saying a month ago you were handed a very serious problem with the debacle in the printing of the ballots. You stepped up, you handled that in short order with what I thought was a very reasonable solution. We had a very large public campaign in Maricopa to educate our citizens on the 2 ballots, the orange stripe. You will be given 2 ballots, and this is the way it will function when you get to the polls. The problem is that's not what happened yesterday morning. As early as 8 o'clock in the morning, I had friends calling me saying, we're at precinct 80 and there's a stack of supplemental ballots and they have no idea what they're for. They're insisting we use the original ballots, which did have the city local elections on the back of. So was that an old ballot that was supposed to be tossed out? Were the new ones not even supposed to have that on? How did it get into circulation? So we have that problem with a systemic organizational problem and training. I don't know if the poll workers were some of those poll workers that might have had to get cast into their role at the last minute due to absenteeism or no-shows or what the case was, but there was definitely a problem with getting the poll workers trained. And it wasn't until 5:30 at Precinct 80 that they started giving out the second supplemental ballot. You know that county commission elections and city council elections are won and lost by a handful of ballots. This has the potential to affect the outcome of our local election in the city of Maricopa. We know that you work hard behind the scenes. We don't see that. We don't see the sausage being made. But gentlemen, you're not judged on the journey. You are judged on the results. And you are hearing the results this morning. They're not good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robertson. Next, Mr. Manfredi.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. Vince Manfredi, I'm the acting mayor of the city of Maricopa. I'm also up for actual re-election, so it was a fun day at the polls yesterday. I own a business, and I've owned businesses all my life, and mistakes happen. We all know that. It's how we react to the mistakes and get solutions in place that determine how we move forward, right? But let's be clear, we can't continue to let them happen, or else none of us would be in business long, and I know a couple of you guys own businesses yourself. I'd never allow continued mistakes in my business, and I wouldn't allow them as an elected position either in the city of Maricopa. We'd find solutions. The good news is that there were solutions found, and we educated the people of Maricopa pretty well. Unfortunately, the education didn't happen at the poll worker level. So I'll give you a quick breakdown. In some precincts, they didn't open the precincts until 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning. Not 6 a.m., 9 or 10. The precinct doors opened up for people to vote. If you wanted to vote before you went to work, it was impossible in those precincts. Ballots were not handed out to municipal voters, even though those voters were begging for that ballot and fighting for that ballot. They were yelled at, insulted, and told to get out of the polling place. They're breaking the law by asking for a ballot they were supposed to get because we educated them in knowing they were supposed to get that ballot. Nonstop for 3 weeks. We told them, get your second ballot, make sure you vote on on one ballot for the municipal races. They were thrown out of the polling places for it. I asked them to go back. They got thrown out again. I went in and I got thrown out of the polling place telling them, hey, you got to give them 2 ballots. We finally got it solved at 5:30 at night. So all day, those folks did not get municipal ballots. They did not vote. They were disenfranchised from voting. Education was a big issue. Our county attorney and others did a wonderful job. You guys had some videos out. I've seen Jeff's video out. You guys had some great videos out. The county did some great work pushing that information out there. People knew they needed the second ballot, but we failed at the election department in training the people who actually handed out the second ballot. They refused. The young man earlier said that paper is cheap and trust is not. That was the last issue that we faced when people ran out of ballots. We did not print enough ballots. How is that possible that we don't print enough ballots? That's a systematic issue, a problem with our elections department that needs to be solved. I'm not saying, we all heard the saying, the buck stops here. In this situation, it's you. The buck stops with you. And you're responsible for what happens at the election department. It's your job. So please make sure that when we get an election coming up for our general election, it's perfect. Because we are right now being called the dirt people of Pinal County on public radio. This is what we're being called. It's an embarrassment to us as Pinal County residents, embarrassment to you as our supervisors, embarrassment to every elected official in Pinal County. We have to make sure we do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manfredi. Mr. Vidiello.
Chair, Supervisors, thank you for having me here today. I'm Councilmember Rich Vidiello from the city of Maricopa. I am also up for re-election. I'm not going to go over what everybody said about the elections because there's no more I can simply say is I'm going to go on the selfish side as council, as a candidate who had to spend, same with all the other people who had to run for election right now. We had to spend a lot of money to run for this election. Heads need to roll. I'm going to keep it short and simple. I spent a lot of money. I spent a lot of time. I probably spend 30 to 40 hours a week minimum campaigning. And again, I know this is emotional. I know this is selfish, but every candidate out there who ran for election may have to go to generals who shouldn't have to go. They may have to spend more money on advertising. They may have to spend more time away from their families, their children, their grandchildren, that we have to go spend all this extra time. So again, everything that everybody said is 100% true. But I want to know who's going to be accountable for this. I run a small business in the city of Maricopa. I'm the general manager. If this happened to my company, my boss would fire me instantly. If there's no accountability, this is going to be another issue that you're going to have to look at. People need to be accountable. Again, you guys came out, you did a great job fixing. Yes, that was all true. But then the ball got dropped major at the polls. People didn't know what they were doing. They didn't know where their 75-foot marker was. I had to show them where that was. I had signs removed that I had to go back and re-put them back in, along with other candidates, because they didn't know where the 75-foot line was. We got thrown out of polling stations because we were trying to help them and let them know what was right and wrong, what were you doing wrong. This affects me greatly because, again, we look like a laughing stock. I'm a New York boy who just hits it straight in the middle. I don't sugarcoat nothing. Thank you for your guys' hard work, but the ball got dropped and heads need to roll. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vidiello. Any others that wish to address the board? Mr. Bean.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Vice Chairman, members of the board. I did get an email, I believe it was, from the chairman here just recently telling me that the issue that I wanted to address is going to be brought up sometime in August. I decided I wasn't too sure when. Let's kick it off now. The issue, up on the screen, number 2, it says call to public. How many in this room, I'm sure the board knows, what does the word public mean? Who can come up to this speaker stand and speak? It's anyone who is not an elected official. If an elected official comes up here during call to the public, they should be ruled out of order and told to return to their seat. If they want to speak to the board, they must be on the agenda. This is not an agenda place for that to happen. This happened back in June when Sheriff Lamb took this speaker's dais. He did start speaking to the board, and then he turned and started yelling and screaming and walking toward me, out of control, not speaking to the board, speaking to me. That should have been stopped immediately. Somebody should have banged a gavel and told him, "You are out of order, take your seat." That did not happen. Further on this list, those wishing to address the Pinal County Board of Supervisors need not request permission. He should have continually addressed the board. He instead wanted me to lose my freedom of speech. He didn't like what I said. That's fine. But he had no business telling me to retract what I said, to return to this dais and apologize. I'm sorry, you would have ruled that out of order. I cannot come up a second time. That was totally out of the question. I knew that. I don't know if Lamb knew that, but I hope the board knew that. This is not a second chance place to speak. I'm hoping that the Department of Justice looks into the sheriff's actions on that day. He tried to rob me of my freedom of speech, my freedom to address the board, and to do it correctly, and he did nothing correctly. Thank you very much.
What was his name?
Tom Bean. I'm sure.
Tom something.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Kavanaugh.
I'm requesting that you direct the county management staff to investigate the procedures and what has happened in this election. Would you please do that?
All right. I'm sorry, Mr. Keller.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Supervisor Kavanaugh, I believe you're asking to have something placed on a future agenda item and asking the county manager for follow-up on that item, and that can be done.
Does that satisfy your?
Yes, it was not agenda item. It's the chairman's discretion to instruct the county manager to look into the issues that were brought up with respect to voting, and I'm asking the chairman to exercise that authority.
Thank you, Mr. Kavanaugh. And Mr. Liu will be looking into the election issues, I know, as we're already doing that now. So we will have further discussions. Does that satisfy your request, Mr. Kavanaugh?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
If I could further that also includes our county attorney's office to be a part of that process.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. And Mr. Volkmer, you've been invited to the group. All right. Any others? Mr. Rack.
I'm Noel Reck from Casa Grande. First, whatever election problems exist, what I'm going to speak to today is not the answer. I've been told by those who are knowledgeable that there's no oversight, no accountability, no recourse, and no present way to stop it. The it being the collaboration between Sheriff Lamb, his organization Protect America Now, and True the Vote. Today, as others have done, I speak to expose this alliance and the abuse of the sheriff's power and office that's being perpetrated in Pinal County and beyond. Articles in Politico and the Daily Star, as well as their own videos being aired on the internet, clearly show the danger of this alliance. The first video shows Sheriff Lamb and the founder of True the Vote explaining their partnership as a nonpartisan effort to engage and educate confused and angry voters concerned about a lack of accountability when election processes break down, meting out consequences when voting laws aren't followed, and thus restoring America's confidence in the electoral process. They soft sell this by saying it's not about Democrats or Republicans, just the rule of law. A visit to their website, however, tells quite a different story. It is quickly apparent that this is not a nonpartisan effort, but an extension of the Stop the Steal, Big Lie, Trump Won movement. True the Vote, which produced and promoted the debunked film 2000 Mules, explains that they will provide sheriffs across the nation with the resources and grants, training, and best practices to ensure that voting rolls are accurate, votes are counted properly, polls are operated properly, thus protecting the integrity of our elections. I ask, why do we need an outside extremist group to provide this? We don't. What exactly are they talking about providing? We don't know that, but I have a pretty good idea. This outside interference helps explain why some election officials and poll workers are leaving their positions, many afraid for their lives. It doesn't take much to see the resources, training, and best practices would be used to infiltrate the electoral process with supporters of the big lie to subvert, not strengthen the electoral process. I'm more than concerned that mingling their money and assistance with that provided by taxpayer dollars makes all of us a party to this abuse of power and the calamitous results that follow. Protect America Now's site features Sheriff Lamb in a video rant about law and order, open borders, crime-ridden cities, progressives taking their guns away, fighting back against the liberal takeover, calling out lies and fake news as images of CNN and Dr. Fauci flash across the screen, pushing back against an overreaching government that wants to make America less safe, secure, and free as images of President Biden flash across the screen, all in the pursuit of winning a purported battle for America's soul. And to help out, please donate $17.76 a month. $17.76, which was not coincidentally the battle cry of the January 6th insurrectionists. Does any of that sound nonpartisan to you? Is there any hope? Well, perhaps Sheriff Lamb can be voted out. Perhaps he'll resign and seek full-time employment with True the Vote. Perhaps he'll back out of this collaboration and work for his constituents as he should. Perhaps the Board of Supervisors can cut his funding for use in other areas since True the Vote is so willing to fund these activities. More reasonably, we can produce a citizens' initiative to change our Constitution and rein in this excessive power so America's soul can truly be saved. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Reck. Any others that wish to address the board? In the back, please. Yeah. And please state your name and generally where you live. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lori Loomis, and I am a new transplant. I lived in Maricopa County for the past 5 years, and just recently moved to Pinal County in Gold Canyon. And I'm just going to speak about my incident yesterday at my new polling place, and how uninformed they were on how to handle my transfer since I hadn't switched my driver's license over yet and had my new voter registration switched over yet. They told me that I needed to go back to Maricopa County since that's where I was registered to vote. So I then thought that this was funny because they told me I couldn't vote where I lived in Gold Canyon. So I went back to Maricopa County to my former polling place, where I had voted before. And then they said, no, you have to vote where you live. And they showed me in the Pinal County guidelines, this is what you need to show them so that you can vote in Pinal County. And I said, okay, I have all of that. And then I went back to Pinal County to show them that. And when I went back to my voting place, they were out of Republican ballots. They had been out. They said that they had ordered them at 1 o'clock. Well, I had gotten there at 4 o'clock. So I said, well, I'll come back. I'll go home for a swim, and then I'll come back. And I came back at 6 o'clock then, and thankfully they had ballots. And they thanked me for coming back. But then we had to go through the process again, and they gave me a provisional ballot. But then the gentleman that was kind of overseeing everything said, I don't know if your vote is going to count. And I said, well, then why am I doing this? And my vote should count. Every vote should count. I'm a resident here. My vote should count. So I just want to explain that there's some education pieces that need to happen and that I'm very disturbed about my experience yesterday. That's all. On this particular portion of the agenda. I'll be back later on.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lemon. All right. Any others that wish to address the board? I'm going to have to call it soon because we have unfortunately, I'll get to you. We have a press conference at 1 o'clock that we get to attend. So, okay, sir in the suit, yes.
Honorable Chair, board members, good morning. My name is Glenn Walp. I reside in Gold Canyon. And I'm here reference the president of the Adobe organization in Gold Canyon, the Association for the Development of a Better Environment. I'm here to indicate that the association is opposed to the approval that is going to be presented to you today regarding the new sign by Center Stage Church. I think you're all familiar with the nomenclature of the sign. It's nearly 5 foot by 8 foot. It's a digital reader board with animation on it. And one of the things I want to make clear, it has nothing to do with the degree of illumination. We understand that this board, if it's put up, will be less than what normally was there, and that's fine, but that's not the issue. The issue deals that the board, just like in the movie The Jerk, when Steve Martin thought he was being shot at and he said, hey, it's the cans, it's the cans, it's the cans. It's not the church. We in the association, Gold Canyon residents, we welcome the church. And you won't find anybody stronger standing before you that will welcome the gospel of Jesus Christ into Gold Canyon. I stand strong in that and I'll die on that hill. And so we wish them well, we wish them success. It's all about the sign. The sign is out of place. It does not belong in Gold Canyon. It is a, if you will, as an analogy, a type of Las Vegas type sign. It's flashing, it's moving, it's large, even though I understand it'll be out between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. in the morning. That's not when people are out there. We took a vote, and hundreds of people in the Adobe Association voted it down, if you will. There were a few that said it was fine. If you look on the Facebook today, there was a poll taken yesterday. 45 people responded to that. Most of them were against it. There were a few that didn't care. But the Adobe people and the citizens of Gold Canyon just feel it's out of place. And this is our concern. You approve that sign. There's nothing stopping all the other businesses on that strip from saying, hey, we want our sign. Maybe larger, maybe smaller. We understand that Walgreens at one time said, hey, we want a flashing sign. The board at that time shut it down. You can bet who's going to be next if you approve it. And then we have other shops all up along the line. That's what the people don't want. Using the words of the people that responded, we don't want it to the Kings Ranch Road turn into a mini Las Vegas Strip. That's all we're saying. We love the church. We welcome them. We just don't want this sign. There's another sign going right up. There's another church right next to it, a Baptist church. They're putting in a sign right now that cost them thousands and thousands of dollars and fully complies with your current rules. There's just no need for that sign there. And so respectfully, I'm asking you to consider that when you vote today, that the citizens of Gold Canyon, those that responded to our votes, said no, we just don't want it. And I thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walp. Any others? You've been here. I'm sorry, ma'am, that you, yes. Yes. I don't know your name. I just have to point. Sorry about that. Yeah. And just as a note on the sign, there will be a chance for you to speak later. There's a public hearing on this, so you don't need to do call to the public. You can come back at the public hearing.
Well, then maybe I should do that because I have some facts and figures that I'd like to present that are more specific than what Glenn just mentioned.
Okay.
So
That would be great. So you could.
I could save you some time right
I forget
now.
which number it is, but it's downstream. Which one? Number 9. So it'll be in a little bit.
Okay, I'll be back.
Okay, thank you. Any others that wish to address the board? Mr. Reveles.
Roberto Reveles, resident of Gold Canyon, frequent user of the podium.
I believe you get miles for this as a flyer.
Truth, transparency, and accountability. That has been my theme over the last 2 decades that I've appeared before this board and its previous iteration when it was a 3-member board. But I recently was subjected to the intimidation referred to by a previous speaker when, at a previous meeting here in this room, Sheriff Mark Lamb walked up to me and pointed at me, and you're hearing this again, and said, "You and your fellow Democrats are destroying our country." No, Mr. Chairman, Democrats are not destroying the country. Neither are truthful Republicans destroying the country. It is people who take advantage of fear-mongering and the big lie. And so today's election calls for calmness on the part of your constituents. And so I'm going to overlook my prepared remarks to simply say, please, again, listen to those of us who have been over 2 decades, starting with the previous Sheriff Paul Bebu, who I can claim I brought truthfulness to this board that finally resulted in his removal from office by the voters. I ask again today, perform financial and performance reviews, not only on Sheriff Mark Lamb, but on the disastrous chaos being caused by the Elections Department. Please do not ignore this request as other requests have been ignored. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Reveles. Any others that wish to address the board? Seeing none, we'll close call to the public, and we will move to County Manager's report. Mr. Liu.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Further on the consent agenda, we do have an item regarding nonprofit contributions, and I wanted to take the opportunity to highlight an example of what good is being done in the community and the impact that those have in District 5, and this was from a contribution from the previous fiscal year for an organization, Good Shepherd, and we have a video that's going to make the point much better than I can.
Good Shepherd Healing Ministries in Apache Junction.
I came here in 1985. I started buying and selling horses, and then I started saving horses.